we're going to figure out what kind of train wreck this is going to be. Holy shit. Is it time for Warhammered?
It is time for Warhammered.
Oh,
Time of the day.
right. That's Jim, and I'm Jazz. And we're here to lie to you about a game that we love.
And we're about to half-ass information for you.
Superficially know a few things about some kind of shit. But anyway.
Yeah. So a couple of our episodes are now out in the public. We've gotten a little bit of feedback.
Also, thank you for if you've been listening from the beginning. We're
It's awesome. All four of you. We hope you stay around for the,
Thanks,
long haul. But on some comments and looking back on it, we have come to the realization that maybe we got a little overzealous in the details of the lore,
which is shocking considering how little we really seem to be able to regurgitate.
We were really excited to tell you about stuff.
We were very excited. Yeah. And so now we feel like maybe this episode we should do a
primer.
Yeah, a little bit of a hey, here's what the fuck we're talking about.
Right.
Just for all you Warhammers.
Yeah, well, let us tell you about it and get you all excited about it.
For all of you that are listening to us just to hear three. See, that's how fucking idiotic I actually am. I can't even count. To listen to us three idiots talk and are going like, yeah, they're, I guess, sort of entertaining, but I don't know what the hell you're talking about. We're going to try and fix that today.
Yeah.
Well, at least for that topic. We get squirreled quite a bit. So if you don't know the topic after that, I don't know what to tell you. We can't fix that.
Yeah. The internet's a thing. Look it up.
But this is Warhammered. We're here for games, drinks, and hijinks, and we are sponsored by Second Pitch Beer Company.
Yes.
Which is the proud Proud, right? We're going with proud?
Yeah, I'm proud.
Yeah.
Proud-ish. It's like,
proud-ish.
It's like your middle child that you're just like, they're there. They did good. No, very super proud of about the company and everyone who works for them.
Yeah, so Beer Jim, not to be confused with Big Jim, because we couldn't even come up with another acronym. We just had to get as close as we possibly could. Yeah, which I guess means I'm actually surrounded by BJs, so we're gonna.
Hey man, it's like prison.
Don't bring out that prison wallet.
We're brought to you by Second Pitch Beer Company, and since we do talk about lore, and I guess we're trying to educate people on. Are we going to go with that? Are we going to try and say that we're an educational podcast?
We're an educational podcast.
Yeah.
You're going to learn
educational, like fucking. Like Phoenix University's like educating people.
I like it. Yeah. We're more the Trump University.
Of we're the ITT of
there you go, the ITT tech.
I think it's important if we have this level of subject matter knowledge sitting around that we tap into that.
You mean with beer and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Because do you see what I did with the tap into?
I know. I
tap
saw that.
Into the
no, it was
knowledge?
great.
Yeah.
Mwah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
This is every time I make one of those jokes, Big Jim over there is like, "Why the fuck am I friends with this man?"
He starts blinking a lot and looking up, and just starts thinking about all
fuck
this.
in the world.
So, I am a huge beer fan.
Yes.
Will admit I am a huge beer fan because I enjoy the flavor and I enjoy the passion that goes behind it. Now, I have thoroughly educated myself on bourbon.
Right, yeah, you're very educated on bourbon.
Yeah, it's like my jam.
Yeah.
Like it can go into very long conversations about it, what distillery's doing what batches were here, there, and the other, what the differences are, da-da-da-da-da. Beer, though, I love and I want to know more. So since I have you as a captive audience, I figured we could do like Beer's Gym Corner.
I love it.
And you could educate us two schmucks. You don't even drink beer, so he's just looking at me like I give no fucks right now.
No, you're gonna drink it. You're gonna like
it.
No, you are.
It stops me up.
It stops you up.
It stops me up.
Well,
and the better the beer, the more I get stopped up.
We're gonna get you a little bottle of X-Lax just next to it. You have an X-Lax station.
We're gonna get you one of those tiny little boots.
Yeah,
it's just like a boot shot glass. And you can sip.
Now the mead, on the other hand, like that shit we had at Christmas, that was
so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, did you guys have mead at Christmas?
Yeah, we had Viking Blood from Dansk Meadery.
I saw that bottle.
Yeah,
shit's dangerous as fuck.
Was it?
Because
it's
it just doesn't.
Mead
is great. Mead's
and
fantastic.
that one that we like, the Viking Blood stuff, is actually hopped.
Oh yeah, hop
yeah, it's really good, man.
So it's a hopped
super
mead.
smooth and.
So I looked into it. They actually use the hops to arrest the fermentation. That's actually how they stop the fermentation. Is they let it ferment to a point, and then they introduce the hops that I guess like takes over the sugar content and stops the fermentation or whatever.
It
was weird. I'd have to show it to you because it was
Yeah,
crazy
please.
how they did it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like drinking soju or sake because you're like, if you drank that whole thing, you'd be batshit and then fucking.
Well, that's the problem with
Yeah,
that Viking
yeah,
blood
it's
is that
so
you
good.
can start. It's just so easy to sit there
Yeah.
and drink.
And mead gets up there in alcohol
So
percentage.
that one is one of my personal favorites, and I think that one's at 19%.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, you're
Yeah,
2 or 3 glasses in, and all of a sudden you're like,
Just loving life.
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
just
Yeah,
everybody's
like, you
your
wouldn't
buddy.
know.
Let me tell you all about what I think about
You'd
you.
be fine until you stood up, and then you're like, oh.
Oh, don't you?
Yeah.
That's the worst and also the best thing when you're at a bar and you've been drinking hard and you stand up. You're like, yeah, there it is.
I've done it
I
I've
found
done it a
it.
few times on your beer.
Really?
There's several of yours that I think I like a little too much.
Yeah.
And the problem is that I find myself a bar stool, and it's either like I own a bar, so it's kind of easy,
Yeah.
or I'm sitting at his bar, and then it's just like, well, I really like this. What do you think? It's like, you should really try this, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden I go to like, I think I gotta pee, and then I go to get off the bar stool, and I'm like,
Oh. Yeah. Just like, I don't know where
So
I'm
down in
walking.
Fredericksburg with the owner of this bar, he came in and he just kept hitting me with like small little things of like fairly rare bourbons for like 3 hours while my wife was doing something with a client. And then by the time he came back, I was fucking gone.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you think of Japanese whiskey? I have no idea. Let's try this.
Yeah,
Fucking let's try that. I'm like, whoa. It's like, what have you been doing? I've been like, this guy's been feeding me
Feeding me
bourbon,
bourbon
for
and
3 hours. Like,
and now I can't walk.
and now I can.
yeah,
So yeah.
but a sip at a time for 3 hours.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
it'll
it
get
was,
you
it was a
there,
taste
yeah.
tester that never ended.
Yeah.
So
God,
yeah.
that sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I ate too. I ate twice while I was there, and still.
So you tried to be responsible with
Well, I ate
it.
when I got there. Then I looked up at the bar, and I'm like, "Whoa, wait, whoa!" They
You
got
have
all kinds of
wings?
stuff. Like, is that Papillon? And and then the guy's like, "Oh, wait until the owner comes back." All right, cool. And then I looked at their menu. I'm like, "Holy shit! Look at all this fucking great bourbon." And then he came in, and he's like, "Try this, try that. How about this?" I'm like, "I like Scotch too. Let's try this. Let's try that." So, anyway, I can see how.
Yeah, it'll sneak up on you.
Yeah, certain.
Yeah.
I mean, beer to me doesn't necessarily. I don't know. It's got to be super. I don't know. I'm not a beer drinker. It's just. I mean, I used to drink beer like everybody else used to drinks beer, but I just can't do it anymore.
And I think that's the difference between, like, I drink beer and craft beer,
Mhm.
is it's a lot like being into bourbon. So,
I'm sure. Yeah.
because being into bourbon, a lot of people would be like, it's just corn whiskey. Like,
Yeah, I don't get it.
I don't get it. And it's like, I could literally put 5 bottles on that table and give you 5 different flavors.
They're all different.
So,
like, well, when
yes,
you-
it's bourbon, but it's not that every bourbon is bourbon. It'd be like me telling you, beer's beer. Like, what's the difference?
When you get to the high level of any type of alcohol,
So much variation.
there's so much variation. It's so nuanced. Like if you're a like a tequila drinker, like some people are just hardcore tequila drinkers. I'm just like, you guys are insane because
Sipping tequila is a thing.
and then you find
Yeah.
like sipping tequila instead
Which
of
is
like
completely different.
which is completely different. You're like, oh shit!
Now I
that's
understand why,
amazing.
he's got a glass with ice.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly, with
ah,
your
'cause
tequila.
Well, and the fact that there's like flutes for tequila and like all
Yeah.
this kind of stuff that's actually meant for sipping tequila, and
Yeah.
it can be quite enjoyable. But
Yeah.
I actually have a tequila at my house right now that's a Texas tequila, but it's tequila that's finished in bourbon barrels.
Mm.
So it's tequila on the front, but the finishes like a bourbon. And yeah, that stuff's way too easy to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's always you always have to be afraid of that.
yeah,
kind
it's
of,
felony juice.
Yeah. It's like, well, make sure that bail
We're
money's
here
easily
now.
available.
So anyways, so I thought we'd start this because like we talked about before the show, how many people could actually tell me the difference between like a porter and a bock?
I can.
Shut up, Jim.
Can I got it.
Yeah,
I got
so-
the answer.
But I figured it would be easiest just to go with like whatever we're drinking because you tend to bring something and I keep a lot of your beer here in the
Yeah,
bar.
exactly.
So it's a little bit easier to talk about like what we're drinking. So
Mhm.
we're drinking 2 different beers right now.
And I can talk about both of them.
As
and
we've
then-
discussed, Jim doesn't. So that we can stretch this out, we'll pick one.
Okay.
And we'll kind of explain like where it falls on style and kind of what we're talking about.
Well, let's do the.
But we can't do half an hour.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to
What's the
do
corner?
what you have in
Yeah,
that?
what I have here. So this is our. It's in a crowler right now, but because I figured I'm not done with cans, just opening up cans. just get the big one.
Just
We're
one
good.
after another.
This is our meet in the middle IPA. So this is a West Coast IPA. And there's a kind of difference between different IPAs right now. There's West Coast IPA, which is very much the IPA that came out in the early 90s, early 2000s. Stone, those big hopped IPAs that you would see with like Stone Brewing Company, Lagunitas, Sierra Nevada,
Sure.
torpedo, that kind of stuff. So it would be more of a hop forward IPA, and we made one very similar to that, which would be more from your California area, which is what we have right now. So it's just a fantastic beer. We use 3 different types of hops with it. So we use Columbus hop as our bittering hop. And then you're going to probably just stop me when you don't understand something.
No, you're
I'm gonna
good
keep
so
on
far.
going,
So
yeah.
far, we're
Yeah.
tracking.
We use Columbus hops as our bittering hop, and then we dry hop it with 3 different hops with equal volumes. We use Citra, Cascade, and Mosaic hops
Okay.
for all 3 of the dry hopping additions.
Okay. And is that what's smoothing it out? Because there's so many of those, like we talked about, those big IPAs that came out,
Right.
that I felt like I was just drinking those Little Trees air fresheners that we all used to have on our
Yeah.
rearview mirrors.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get into them. And there were so many of those companies that came out with these things that was just like,
What you're talking about is the hop wars of the early 2000s.
oh my God, all that
Yeah.
like
The hop
hopsecution.
wars.
The
Yeah.
hop war. No, it's literally like kind of what it's called. Is that they were trying. There was a point in like craft beer where the idea was to get as many IBUs as possible. And IBUs are international bitterness units. It's
Yeah.
basically a way that you can measure how bitter a beer is.
But that's
You
when you
know,
started seeing this stuff like hopsecutioner and all this stuff.
Hopsecutioner.
That was all this just like,
It's 100 IBUs.
can I make you
200
hate
IBUs.
your life
Yeah.
while you drink this beer? And I don't understand that. Like I don't get why I'd want to sit down and enjoy a craft anything that I can't enjoy. So I use the word sit down to enjoy, but you can't enjoy it. Like
Mhm.
it just hurts. And it's like nobody likes this. I'm sorry. And if you do, you either weren't hugged enough as a child or you were hugged too much.
It was a weird like masculinity thing. It was like a real toxic masculinity thing when it was
Nobody
coming
really
out.
liked it.
Nobody really liked it. but
Nobody
you
liked
tested
it.
out.
Yeah.
Nobody
You
liked
did
it.
it
It was just
because you
like,
had
it was
to.
just like, this is real beer. And it's like,
Yeah.
no,
it's not.
it's not.
Yeah, nobody else
like-
fucking does this.
So then the only other thing I will ask about that, because I've always been curious and I've heard like 8,000 myths or whatever. So we're going to debunk it right now.
Cool.
On the authority that is Warhammered. IPA stands for India Pale Ale.
Correct.
Why is it called an India Pale Ale?
Okay, so the traditional story that I've always heard, and the one that I keep on spouting around, is that it was a beer that was brewed in England, but it was made to be shipped around the Cape of Good Hope. That's the one around India?
Yep.
Or
Well,
around
that's
Africa?
around Africa.
Around Africa to India. It's for the Indian or for the British soldiers stationed
For
in
the
India.
colonial.
For the colonials.
Yeah.
And hops do 2 things. One is, hops are pretty much their flavor component, but they also have a slight bit of preservatives in them as well. They're a natural preservative.
So the style was literally meant so that they could barrel it up and it would make it to where it was
It would
going
make it to
without
where it was
going
going.
horrible.
Without going too horrible.
Okay.
That's it. And
There you
then
go.
and then they made this beer. It got shipped around. People in England were drinking it. And they're like, oh shit, we actually kind of like this. You know, we're going to keep on drinking it. And then it became morphed into the beast that
That's
it is
weird, 'cause
now.
British pale ales is not really a thing. I guess anymore.
No, not
Maybe.
anymore. But Mike, when we're talking about IPAs, we're not talking about modern IPAs. Modern IPAs are in the 60 to 100 IPAs.
So this was still even
below
way
that.
less than
Way
that.
that.
Oh, okay.
But by their standards, it was a very, very hoppy beer.
Oh, okay.
By modern standards, it's not.
Because I know British beers as, like pub ales and an English bitter and then
English bitter was the bitter beer.
and then Guinness and
Yeah.
all the stouts and the different stuff like that. Like there's an English beer that you're actually supposed to put salt in, and I can't remember the name of it now.
I don't know that
Old
one.
Speckled Hen?
Yeah, that's it.
I think it's Old Speckled Hen, but
It's
you're supposed to
exactly what it is.
well, you're supposed to like sprinkle salt on top of it, and that's what
I've
actually makes
never
it
heard
effervescent
that.
and stuff
I
like
don't-
that.
I've
I'll
never
find
heard
some.
that.
We'll try.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Do that. I found it.
Donkey's ass. What the fuck?
Yeah, I know, right? The actual beer guys like that. That sounds made up as fuck. Like,
No, Old Speckled Hen is a great beer. You
I
know,
like it.
there's Bombardier, Old Speckled Hen, Spitfire,
Yeah, all of those. And they're all kind of the same style. but
London
they're,
Pride.
they're just
Fuller's.
British beer.
Yeah.
Like it's just
Sure.
an English style.
Yeah, it's
beer.
all
They're very
every
good.
style of beer from England has like a weird name, like it's the Anna the doggy gotcha.
Yeah,
that
but all
bit
their-
you on the ass. That's
but
what
all
the
their-
name is.
All their pubs are set up the same way too.
Yeah.
Like if it's an English pub if it has 2 things in it.
Yeah, yeah. That's
You know,
like
it's-
the King's Arms.
Yeah, right. Or like it's down at the Hook and Boat. And it's like the what? And
Why
it's
is there a hook and why is there a
Yeah,
boat and why are we
it's-
drinking it?
Yeah, down at the Goose and Lad. And it's like, what the fuck? Who's naming these
who,
things?
who does this?
Yeah,
Slaughtered lamb.
Yeah,
the slaughtered lamb, all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. Nice D&D
American
pull,
Werewolf-
very
yeah,
nice. Yeah.
American Werewolf in London.
So, anyways, speaking of wars,
Yes.
since we brought up the hop war, look at this transition, Jeff.
Fucking
Are you
hot
ready for
war,
this fucking
Jesus
shit?
Christ.
It is time
always
to
a war.
actually, I guess, we are gonna give a semi-sober recap of
40K?
of Warhammer
Warhammer.
and where we're at, like how we got where we're at, so
Fuck
people understand
yes.
what the fuck we're talking about.
Let's do it.
So the linchpin of all of it, and what we have to talk about, is Big Daddy E,
Mhm.
the Emperor himself,
Yes.
who is known as the Emperor of Mankind. And he doesn't have a name. He's only referred to by his title. That is it.
He's
Anywhere in
never
the
had a
lore,
name. Yeah.
nowhere in the lore has it ever brought up
Any other kind of
what his name is. He's just the Emperor of Mankind.
Part of that reason is he doesn't have a name is the guy is 20,000 years old, 40,000 years old.
Well, so it's interesting when you bring that up, right?
Yeah.
Because based on like how much into the lore you want to get,
Mhm.
you can actually go older,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So there's the whole. Okay, so from what I understand of the story, there was like a cabal of shamans that did this like ritualistic mass suicide and pushed all of their spiritual energy into the warp. And the warp is Warhammer Universe's version of
Hell.
hell.
Yeah.
It's all your emotions. It's all of humans'
Right,
emotions.
both good and bad.
Both good and bad. But unfortunately, in Warhammer, it's predominantly
Right.
bad.
And it's actually all living things emotions exist in the warp. And it's also referred to as the Great Ocean, da 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 da. It is both a space and not a space. It is what's referred to as the immaterium. Our world is considered the materium. That's about as deep into that as we need to go.
And that's how you transmit space. That's how you get around.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't exist in the same A to B.
It's like warp drive.
up and
Once
down.
you
okay,
go warp drive, you hit it.
If you
go,
ever seen Event Horizon,
which is a
Sure,
great example.
perfect.
which is a great example
Absolutely.
of traveling in the warp before they had the Geller drive and all this kind of stuff that
Well, and
we
to be
won't
honest
get
with
into.
you, Star Trek.
Star Trek.
When Star Trek goes to when they engage warp drive,
Yeah.
they are falling out of our space and into subspace.
Mhm.
And it
So they're
allows
not
you to travel.
and it allows you to
Mass
travel
distances very
faster than light, but it is.
And
And
it's
then
the
we can
same-
go down a rabbit hole on that because sometimes you don't end up where you think
Right.
you're going to end up, or you end up
That's-
before or after. Because
The warp discussion is like a.
yes,
It's a totally
it's a
different.
but that's
thing.
what it is.
But
the
that's how
warp-
you get around is you
Yeah.
drop into basically hell and then you
right.
piggyback out to where you need to be.
Yeah.
But the warp is also where essentially everything that is the equivalent to magic in our world comes from that side. So from the immaterium. So psychic ability, the ability to see into the future, that all comes from
Demons and all that kind of stuff. That's where they come from.
right. So anything that's not normal, I guess.
Right.
Uh,
That doesn't abide by the law.
and by the way, stuff from the materium can come into stuff from the immaterium can come into the materium, but stuff that tries to go into the immaterium from the materium typically just gets fucked. So, at any rate, that's where all of like psychic ability and everything comes. So from what I understand, somebody's gonna get so mad because I'm gonna fuck this up.
Yeah.
Like there was this cabal of shamans, like this group of shamans, that all got together and did the whole like wob 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 wob, and then ritual suicide to condense their energy and launch it all into the warp.
That was the original story, and it's slightly
Right.
been retconned, but it's still what everybody knows.
So then they get into the warp and they squeeze themselves all together, and then they birth the Emperor back into the materium. So he comes out as the most powerful psyker and powerful essentially everything in our galaxy. Like it's just he's as strong as it gets.
Yeah, he is basically the top notch of what man can be.
And beyond. Like
And
he's a little
beyond.
taller
Yeah.
than normal. He's got these insane psychic abilities. He's immortal. Like
He can transmutate,
he can transmutate. He can be taller, be smaller. Da 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 da.
change what he looks,
Uh,
make people believe things.
The really fun lore is when you get into like every major player in human history that has ever kind of re-guided human history has been him, both good and bad.
Attila the Hun,
Alexander the Great,
Caesar,
Hitler,
Hitler,
Yeah.
yeah,
Napoleon.
Jesus, like all of them were
the same guy.
him. It's all him.
Because he cannot die. He is a perpetual. He will never die.
Right. And so every time he comes forward and does this thing, it's to push humanity in a certain direction because he's got this ginormous plan that makes man the superior species of the galaxy, that they are the only thing that controls anything. Have I said anything so far that you two were like, nope, that sounds made up?
That's
Nope, you're 100% right.
Okay.
You got it.
So, there's multiple ages. We'll get into them later. There's like the Age of Enlightenment. There's the Golden Age. There's the Age of Strife. There's the Age of Darkness. So there's a timeline to this. But most importantly is you need to understand that the Emperor is damn near a god.
Very close.
Like,
but he also says repeatedly he is a man.
Yep.
He never acknowledges his godhood
and hates religion.
And hates religion. So he's
all about science and
which is called the imperial truth.
Right.
Which is basically science and logic based. Doesn't think religion needs to be around anymore. Everything needs to be logical, science based, proven fact. The end.
So, and because of this, he's big into making experiments. Jim, what do you know about the Thunder Warriors?
So the Thunder Warriors were the prelude to the Space Marines. A little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, but built basically to have a finite amount of time on the planet. So the last age before we get to 30K, 40K, or whatever, there was a bunch of wars on Earth. Earth's all fucked up. Nuclear wars, this and that. And there was all kinds of tribes and barbarians and factions and whatnot. And his first thing is he needed to unite Earth. That's where he needed to do. So the first thing he creates
we're talking
these
so fucked up we boiled off our own oceans.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing left.
The first guys that he kind of builds are these Thunder Warriors, and these guys go and they basically either kill and or unite all the tribes of mankind, so then they could go forth and at least unite the solar system to start with. The Thunder Warriors, the final battle happens in or around Turkey, and they win, and everything's good. And he then decides with his Custodes that they gotta go.
Okay, so now that you've said them, who are the Custodes?
So the Custodes are his bodyguards. They are kind of first of all, they fight as a singular sort of one-man army within a massive army of these guys. They're the best of. First of all, they're genetically.
They're synthetic people.
Yeah, they're genetically linked to
These are
him.
not children that were turned into Custodes. They are straight up
clones,
test tube babies.
And they've got genetic material that came from the Emperor, unlike the
so they're stronger, faster, more intelligent,
Yeah.
can do things.
And completely subservient. There is no free will in the Custodes.
Extremely, I'm like, there's a little bit of free will,
We'll
but
get there, Jim.
But they'll never go
I don't want to go in the rip. So anyway, they decide that the Thunder Warriors have to go, and to an extent, they basically kill what's left of the Thunder Warriors after this last
Because
battle.
the Thunder Warriors were considered unstable. Because they didn't, now that they've won this war,
they tend to go insane.
Yeah.
They had the,
that's usually their last stage before they either kick off or whatever.
Yeah,
a few guys
race
do
of superhumans.
A few of them do
can go insane and go into.
A few of them do kind of
maintain
just like most massacres. There's a few of them still around. There may be still a few around in the 40K universe, but for the most part, they're gone. So that's where the Thunder Warriors, and that's his first real shot at a sort of
a superhuman, a super soldier,
soldier.
And also, one of the things I want to point out at this point is that the Emperor really doesn't look at these things as people or as things. They are tools to be used.
They are a puzzle
and as
piece.
soon as they are usefulness, it's like a hammer that breaks. You don't hold on to the hammer and try to repair it. You throw it away and you make a better hammer.
And all of these projects, and that's all you can call them.
Projects, yes.
They are puzzle pieces. But the problem is the only person that can see the picture on the cover of the box to the puzzle
is the
Emperor. So... And that's honestly where a lot of the problems
and that's
in the
where
universe
things
end up coming
sort of start. So basically, the Thunder Warriors get massacred. They drift off to wherever the few remaining guys, and then we get the next big thing, which was to deal with the Mechanicus, the folks on Mars, the folks on the Moon,
right? Yeah. So you have the Adeptus Mechanicus,
and then build the Imperial Palace.
Weren't the Adeptus Mechanicus prior to cutting the deal with the Emperor? They were the Cult Mechanicum.
Yeah.
Until Big E flies over to Mars. Prior to the fracture, we colonized Mars.
Yeah. Prior to the fracture, I'm like, if you want to go roll back, there's the long night, which is called like this time that is shit all went down and shit became bad. We actually were a species that was going out into the stars and colonizing worlds, and going out and being
even
like
prior to the Thunder Warrior thing that he's talking about.
Yeah.
That is something that we need to talk about. Is ships went off into the greater galaxy. And I don't mean like our
Colonized
solar
worlds.
system. I mean the galaxy.
Yeah,
Colonized
explorers,
universe.
colonize universe, like colonize the galaxy.
Colonized. But the
And the-
nearest jump was obviously Mars.
So you
Well-
have these independent societies on these different planets, especially in our solar system.
But Mars, just like now, not overly friendly to life.
Yeah.
So that means that a bunch of technology had to be pushed to survive on this planet. Well, that ends up founding essentially this religion called the Cult Mechanicum. And they believe in the machine spirit and that you are closer to the machine spirit by sacrificing more of your body to become more and more augmented.
The idea is that the
Da-da-da-da-da.
machine is more perfect than human, so therefore you
Right.
want to be more machine than you are human.
Right. So now, as all of these colonies are happening, then we just kind of fall out of communication. Essentially, technology got to the point to where you had the age of dark, the age of strife, the long night.
Yeah.
We all just stop talking, and we forget how to do so much.
It's basically another dark age.
Right, which we actually see in modern history books where we're like just now figuring out stuff that the Romans were doing, that it was like, this is
Yeah.
not new.
How did we
Or
do
It's
we,
like-
we even don't what is it, the Persian fire or whatever it is, or Byzantine fire?
Oh,
we
yeah.
still have no idea how they've
Yeah,
even
well,
made
it was
that.
like
I have
how
no
long
idea
we-
really how they built the pyramids, and that's
Yeah,
kind of what we're
exactly.
talking about. That's
Yeah.
kind of some of those things they took and said,
Sir,
okay,
that was tens of thousands of slave labor.
that is,
That's how that gets done.
yeah, that is a lot of people
and
dying.
they still don't know.
That is
So-
Qatar on drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get a lot done if you just throw bodies at it. Like it's, but well, it's things like how long we went without plumbing, but the Romans had it. It's
Yeah.
things like that. Like, so we fall out of communication, and all of these different civilizations kind of start doing their own thing, including Mars, who developed this whole thing and advanced technology to a point that is just way beyond anything that anybody has at the time. So the emperor goes and goes like, "Hey guys, remember us? Your neighbors, right down the road?
Can I have a cup of sugar?
Just wondering if we could have a little chat, because I'm gonna go on this thing called a crusade, because nothing bad has ever come from using that word when you go on any sort of
Nothing
mission.
bad has ever happened when you said crusade. at the
And
end.
I'm gonna need stuff. And you
And
guys
you
are
guys have stuff.
really good at making stuff.
Things. I need things.
So would you be down? And the cult was like, okay, but we're not gonna call you daddy. And he was like, I can deal with that as
Yeah.
long as I get things. And that's just kind of the loose truce that's now been held. Is just like they're gonna recognize that Terra and the
Or
Emperor
Earth.
is part of the they run the
On the
Imperium,
side, yeah.
but there's the Imperium, and then there's the Cult Mechanicum.
Yeah.
And now they're
It's
called
a-
the
it's-
Adeptus
it's a-
Mechanicus and da-da-da.
a
So they're
Let's-
allowed to keep their religion,
Yep.
even though Emperor is against religion.
Oh, so much so that so much so that they'll send Space Marines back to become Tech Marines, and they like adorn their stuff with it and stuff like that. So they're allowed to hold on to their thing.
Yeah.
But that starts the Crusade,
Mhm.
which is where we see the birth of the Space Marines.
Yes.
Now, the only reason we get Space Marines is because Big Daddy E got lonely,
That's it.
and he decided to make 20 boys.
Well, the idea was for him was that he wanted to.
He needed generals.
He needed generals. He needed people who can be autonomously generals out in the world, because he is still only one man and he needs to delegate.
And I think that they haven't fleshed out kind of, and they need to, because it's fascinating if you're into this stuff, like how the Thunder Warriors fought and all those things. They don't really have a lot of those
Yeah, it does,
stories.
yeah.
So now you've got Primarchs, because he probably realized I need guys.
So that's where the 20 sons come in. And we know them as Primarchs. And what they were was Big Daddy E, instead of going and being like, this is my lady friend, and we're going to make babies, he went, because he loves science, and he made 20 of his own kids. So, and they are all custom made
Mhm.
test tube babies.
And much
So-
like Mars was into stuff, the Moon had its own colonies, and they were into genetic
yeah.
Manipulation.
manipulation, and that's where he was able to go cut a deal with those guys probably first. I'm assuming since it's
well,
the move.
It's not the first deal he cut.
But he gets those guys, and they,
They build a big lab underneath his house.
yeah,
So underneath
the Imperial Palace.
the Imperial Palace,
Yes.
which essentially is all of Europe at this point.
it's
all the Himalayas.
it's all the it's the Himalayas. It's the Himalayan
Well, one
mountains.
wall of it is the
Yeah,
Himalayas,
yeah.
and then
It's a ginormous city. It's not a
It's
palace.
really
It's not a
silly.
building.
They call it a
It
palace.
is the biggest city on Earth.
right, but it's country sized. I mean,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
isn't like
It's
like
mostly
the Vatican is a city, but you could like walk across it in an hour.
Yeah,
Like this is not that.
Yeah,
Like this is
you're 100% right.
This is obnoxious.
Yeah.
Like see it from space kind of big.
Yeah.
Like it's big.
Yeah.
So they build a lab underneath his house where he makes 20 boys that are smarter, faster, stronger. He makes $26 million men.
Yeah.
So
and these guys are 7 feet tall. They can lift tons. They have cognizant ability. They can understand things immediately.
Some of them are, all of them are psychic. Some of them are just more psychic than others. They're
the best of the best. The best.
Right. Perfect tacticians. The whole 9 yards. Coded that way. Like they're genetically built to be this. But he cuts a deal before he starts making these dudes with these fellas that live in the warp. And there's 4 of them, and they're known as warp gods.
The chaos gods.
The chaos gods, and they'll get their own thing. But there are 4 of them. It's Nurgle, Slaanesh, Khorne, and Nurgle, Slaanesh, Khorne, and who am I forgetting? Tzeentch.
Yeah.
Tzeentch.
So, and they represent essentially these 4 huge emotions or ways of life or whatever you want. Anyway, we'll get into them later. But he cuts a deal with them to get the knowledge necessary to make these boys. But with all deals, any of these deals that you're going to cut, at the crossroads and da-da-da-da, they come with a price. And homie didn't pay up on time.
No, he did not.
So he's got these 20 boys in their test tubes just chilling. He's baking them. Easy bake style. Just, look at my boys. And the gods were like, nope. So they just opened a portal and yeeted these bitches across the galaxy. Just
no idea where they were. Just
20 of them just poof. So, but he's still got the genetic code, the juice, the
stuff,
the good stuff,
the thing
that makes a Primarch. And so he goes and he snatches some humans and he's like, "Hey, if I put a little of this go juice in you,
yeah,
you're gonna be awesome.
Let me just inject this real quick.
Let me shoot this in you real quick."
And he creates
the legions.
Legions, which each legion had
Legion of Space Marines.
A sort of a footprint or a fucking of each of their guys.
Right. So they get what's called the gene seed, which is traits of their Primarch.
Mhm.
They don't become as powerful as a Primarch, but they do become superhuman, and they are Thunder Warrior 2.0, which we know as Adeptus Astartes or the Space Marines.
And they don't have Best Buy date.
No,
they don't have a Best Buy date. Great, yeah.
So that's
for the most part,
they are pasteurized.
It is very rare. Now, granted, based on the fact that there's only war in the future, none of these guys ever die of old age because they won't die. Probably won't die of old age because that's just not what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's never been tested.
Because most of them die in combat at some point. But there are some really old Space Marines rolling around. So these guys are sitting there. He creates these legions. They have different names based on the,
and he numbers them.
And he numbers them. Yeah,
1 through 20.
1 through 20. And
very Roman style.
And we're gonna pack you fuckers into space into various expeditionary organizations, and we're gonna go forth and we're gonna reunite mankind.
Right, which is known as the Great Crusade.
Yeah.
So, and the goal of the Great Crusade is to get rid of this whole.
They could have called it like the Great Hello. They could have done like the Great
Reunification.
The reunification. The Great How you doing?
That's what you had.
Reunification War.
Yeah, the reunification war. But I'm like, just Crusade sounds so bad. It could have been
so awful.
It could have been just been like the Great How you doing? Remember us?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they had a nice name. It was Compliance.
Yeah,
Hi, you guys, are you complying? I'm complying. You're not complying. We're gonna fuck you up.
Keep in mind that the humans that fell out of touch with Earth, were out of touch with Earth for so long.
We're hundreds of
they had their own
thousands of thousand years.
Yeah, 10,000 years. Like
they just completely rebuilt society. And so most
of them
forgot about Earth.
Some of them are fighting and dealing with aliens. Some are allied with aliens. Some have taken on alien traits. Some have been dealing with that shit.
Some are
barbarians. Some of it, some cross-pollinated with it. So they're dealing with the real shit completely for years.
Gone about Earth. Earth wasn't a thing anymore.
So they go on
the
Great Crusade.
Yep.
And they send them out there. And it's a twofold thing. It is one, to start reunifying the galaxy so that it all belongs to mankind. And two, Big Daddy E wants his boys back.
Yeah.
So he's out searching for
them. It's to conquer and find.
He built all these super soldiers, cut them into legions, knowing who they were already going to belong to.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then he goes out to find these guys. Now, he's the strongest psyker in the universe. So, kind of getting an idea of where your boy's at. It's not like he just stumbled upon these guys blindly. There's a lot of the stories and stuff where he goes to the planet and he just shows up and walks right up to him and goes like, "I'm your dad."
Nice to meet you.
And then he's like,
Yeah, just like
"You are my dad. I've been waiting."
Some of those things go better than others. Some people
go
don't want to follow him
because you guys like Magnus that are like, "I know.
yeah, I knew
I've
this
been
all
dreaming
along.
of you since I was a child, so I know who you are. Like
Yeah.
I'm here for it."
Some don't have a problem with it.
Others are like,
Yeah.
I don't know you.
I run this show.
Yeah.
here.
I don't know
Who the
you.
fuck are you? Some of them fight. Some
Yeah.
of them don't. Like at any rate,
Some of them cut a deal. You
all
know?
20 of them end up going, "Yeah, I'm in. Whatever. Let's go do this."
With either by force or by agreement.
Right. So, but at any rate, he does find all 20 of his dudes.
Yeah.
2 of them, pretty much right off the bat, just don't work.
And
it's just
for those
Unknown
who are wondering,
reasons.
like, hey, there's no real stories or lore to those things. Really, what Games Workshop decided was we want you to be able to create your own legions.
It gives some space and it gives
With-
some mystery, right?
yeah.
Whereas like there was 20 sons, 2 of them are completely censored.
and what happened?
So, like one of them supposedly was just kind of lost, like they got sent somewhere,
It
and
just never came back.
and because it's such a spectacular failure, they're not spoken of.
Mhm.
And then the other one
was destroyed.
they got censored, which we spoke about on a previous episode
Yeah.
about how Russ has only been allowed to do his job twice. That was the first time.
Hopefully, they get around to that. Maybe they will.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's 2 and 18.
I don't know. What's your crib sheet say?
Are the 2 legions that were
I
deleted?
don't know. What does my crypto say?
But I don't know. That's effort, dude. I'm leaning forward to grab my beer. That's all the
Yeah,
effort you're getting from
It
me.
is 2 and
I think it's 18.
I think you're right with 18. No, 19.
2 and 19.
2 and
Okay.
19. Look at this.
Yeah. So, 2 and 19 get just deleted.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, the rest of them are off doing their thing.
Yep.
Bringing worlds into compliance, doing what they're supposed to do,
They
spreading
get,
the good
they
word.
get their Space Marines. They rename them.
They get their Space Marines, yeah, and they do things like we're Legion, 6, and it's like, no, you're not. You're
What is 6?
6 is
why I have that
the
thing.
Yeah,
that's
me.
the wolves.
Yeah, 6 is the wolves. Yeah.
Yeah, so
we're
they're the
the-
space
Yeah,
wolves.
you're the space wolves or the
um,
Vilca Fenrica.
the Vilca Fenrir. They don't like being called space wolves.
Don't call them space wolves.
That's 6. 20 is the Alpha Legion.
Alpha
Right.
So all the Primarchs get to go and
13th
rename.
is the Ultramarine.
Right.
Yeah.
15th is the Thousand Suns.
Yeah.
So, like so they all get to go name their thing. But they are still referred to as like the First Legion, the Second Legion, the Third Legion. So it's the 6th Legion, Volca Fenrica, blah blah
And
blah blah.
so one thing some of the guys, so you end up with this ready-made army. They're all Terrans, or then you get an opportunity to raise your own
You get to bring
planet
some of your boys with
or
you.
your solar system or whatever you've got. In the case of Gilliman, in the 500 worlds, you get to recruit from them and
Yeah.
bring those guys up, and they kind of mesh.
Yeah. So
all of these also something we
because
want to bring
none
up.
of the Primarchs were like got lost and landed on their planet and were like
Just living in a hut.
weavers. Like that's
Yeah.
not. It's not
Yeah,
like
it's not what they did. Every one of the
I sell
Primarchs.
shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they
Didn't
became like
happen.
leaders of their world.
Yeah.
All of them become in charge, and
Yeah.
in like
In some-
record time.
They're
Stupid.
it's this wonderful place like friggin' Gilliman, or you've got Mortarion, which he's leading rebellions and killing people and dealing with friggin'
Or you got
So-
Angron,
Yeah,
who's
they-
like
or Angron,
it's-
who's a friggin' pit slave,
yeah,
Yeah.
and
but
didn't
becomes
want
the best pit slave there is.
and he didn't want to leave. Didn't want to leave his guys,
No.
which I find his story is kind of fascinating in the beginning.
yeah, that one I
he
would
would
have
rather just stayed a rebel and just fought.
Yeah.
and just
I
And
would've-
we'll
I
talk
would-
about
yeah.
everybody's backstory and what they were doing.
yeah.
Yeah, because they're all very fascinating.
Yeah.
They've been flushed out really nice
Since
by
when
Game
am I the one that
Workshop.
keeps us online? Like what the
Yeah, I know, right?
So they finds all of his dude, and for about 200 years,
Everything's great.
everything's groovy.
Man, we are
They're
in our
traveling
groove.
around.
We're getting it.
They're bringing
We
worlds into
are-
compliance. They're
Compliance,
finding lost
compliance,
worlds. They're
compliance,
just doing all sorts of stuff, right? And they're like,
There's like a friendly competition
maybe-
between everybody.
maybe not this one so much. We'll just go ahead and burn this planet to the ground. Like,
It was a lot.
We're fighting Xenos, which
yeah, they're
is
fighting
aliens.
Xenos. They're
Yeah.
fighting they're fighting the greenskins, which are the
Yeah.
orcs.
They're making sure there's planets around.
They're
getting
doing their
people- they're
thing, right?
great.
Doing their thing. The
Doing
Mechanicum
fucking
is like,
great.
"Hey, y'all are doing so good, we can't make bullets fast enough. This is
Just
crazy.
fucking
Yeah.
great.
Just out there just doing shit.
Everybody's being compliant,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're very compliant.
Compliant.
And then
Compliant.
Big Daddy E
I will
goes,
fuck you too. You love me.
you know what, my guys? You're doing so fucking good. You don't need me around no more. And he deuces and goes back to Tara.
He
Not,
says,
and that's literally all he
Horace-
says.
Yeah,
That's all he says. He's like, you guys are just gold starring the shit out of this. I'm gonna leave.
Yeah, and quite literally goes,
And then
"So
all of his sons that they call him sons are like, you're gonna what?
you're gonna what? And so he looks at Horace.
Which is the gold star, gold star.
He is the boy of boy.
Yeah,
like
he is.
Yeah,
he is
such a good boy.
Such a good boy.
That's his guy.
Such a good
Such a
boy.
good
Yeah,
boy.
for about 10 minutes.
And
after
he goes,
fucking fucked
Horace,
up.
you're the War Master. And he's like, you damn right I'm the War Master. And he goes, all right, now I'm leaving. And Horace goes, wait, Daddy, what?
What? It was definitely like all the Primarchs were like, all right, he's the War Master. Like, cool. All right, we got a chain of command now. We got this going. This is the organization we need.
Yeah.
I'm leaving. Like, you're going to do. Where are you going? Like,
Where you
back to Terra.
I got to go
What-
do the great work.
Yeah.
Motherfucker, what?
What is the great? I thought we were the great work.
Nope.
Nah, I
I got things more important than
I
y'all's
got greater
punk-ass-
work.
Yeah, and they're like, wait, Dad, you like lost us once, and now you're just deucing out
Do you
again.
He'll be
even love
fine.
me?
Horace has got it.
Do you
Yeah.
even love
So he
me?
leaves
As far
Horace.
as it turns out,
Horace is groovy for
doesn't
like
fucking have it.
for like a nap, and then he's like, "Fuck this," and he just
Rebels the shit out of
well,
him.
Horace gets hurt,
Well,
and then they whisper some sweet nothings in his ear, and then he's like, "You know what? You right as fuck. My dick's as big as my dad. I'm gonna do what I want."
so
Yeah.
what?
And by the way,
Workshop
there
has
is
done
there-
though.
There's a
what they-
40 novel series about what that what we're
Yes, if you ever have
we are
the descent of the
glossing
shit show.
over right now.
So, well, what Games Workshop has done is said the evils of organized religion,
just written.
because the one guys who are really into organized religion start whispering, "Hey, you
Yeah.
can do this by yourself."
well, and essentially, they look
I blame Urbis for fucking everything. That
No,
piece of
100%,
shit is a
100%.
fucking
Oh,
word.
yeah.
But essentially, listen, is Primarch.
But
Oh,
Horace
Fuck those guys.
doesn't talk to
We're
any of his.
bears.
But Horace doesn't even like go to get help from his brothers. He just starts like sales pitching it. He's just like, "Yo, I got these pamphlets. That's in the books, by the way." He literally gives
You
pamphlets
pamphlets?
to a brother that it's like,
Hey, you should read
"Hey,
this.
my brother,
Read this literature.
look at these pamphlets." And I'm like, what the fuck? So Horace essentially goes, "I could be the emperor. What do we need him for? I know.
I can do
I
what
know
he
more
does.
than he
I can
does.
take care of mankind.
He's
better
not the
than
one
Emperor
out here doing it. That's me."
Got it.
So
whenever
he
you
stirs some shit, and he gets a bunch of his brothers to join in on him trying to take over the family business.
Yeah, it's basically like any like 1980s like gangster like mafia movie. You know,
Yeah,
where there's always that
100%.
second-hand guy that's like, I think I can
He's
do
the
it.
fucking Fredo of
He
goddamn
is the
fucking
Fredo.
Fredo.
That's it,
of
that's
I
what
can
it
do
is.
things. I'm smart. I'm smart.
I'm not like smart like him, but I'm smart.
So what Games Workshop has done, and they have said, if they've taken historical events and sort of made it, everything is historically got its similarities with, and you can
Correct.
look at these things, the Primarchs, which kind of Primarch is which, what Horus does and doesn't do. These things are all historically things that have happened, kind of, you know. So they've done this. So when you pick up the literature, you pick up the books, you look at the lore, they've made it very, very easy to kind of be like, oh, I kind of get this. This is like this. This
It's
is like
very
that.
familiar.
It's
Yeah, a lot of
extremely
the
familiar.
story arcs and the
Like
and the
Angron and
cultures and
Spartacus.
stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
it's
Absolutely.
very
Yeah.
familiar. So when Horace goes, "Yo, I can do this,"
Right.
He goes on this thing and he kind of keeps a secret, kind of doesn't talk to some of his boys,
that he
get
thinks
some
will
of his
get on.
brothers.
He's got to figure out who's probably going to buy
Right.
the
Who's
buy his
cool?
program.
Who's cool? Who's cool? Who's
Then he
cool?
splits the Primarchs in half. Now he splits the Primarchs in half, but
9
it's
on
not
9. Yeah.
necessarily that he's got 8 with him. Because I would argue that things like Magnus and stuff never really join Horus. They're just no longer with the Empire.
Yeah.
Or
Okay, I
Alpha
can get
Legion.
that.
Sure.
Alpha Legion, same thing.
Yeah.
They never really like join Horus. They're just not with the Empire anymore.
Yeah, they have to make it. They have to choose
So,
a side. They can't.
it's
just,
kind of interesting how it's handled. So huge war, big fight, a lot of slap fighting. It's weird.
the biggest war humanity has ever seen.
If you've ever seen that like drunk argument at Christmas at 2:00 in the afternoon with a family that's too big,
2:00 in the afternoon, that's your family.
yeah.
2:00.
So
Oh, nice.
it's a lot like that.
They didn't have a 2:00 in the afternoon.
Was
fight
it 10 a.m.?
at your house? No.
Oh, not at my house. No,
Yeah.
no.
No.
That's why I don't invite family.
yeah.
So,
There's some family
Good
members
call.
there. It was all right.
but big war rages over the galaxy. The whole galaxy's
Yeah.
just like, what the fuck? Like nobody is unaffected by this thing, and he gets all the way back to Terra, and big fight happens. Horus and Daddy are in the room. Daddy gets hurt. Horus dies. Sanguinius dies. Some other Primarchs get pissed off and leave. Da 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 da. So they take Big Daddy E and they put him in a magic chair.
That will sustain his life. It's like basically super life support.
Right. So, but this magic chair lets him still be essentially a lighthouse in the warp, which, as we explained, is how you travel around faster than light.
Mhm.
So he's a lighthouse. So you know where Terra is, and that's kind of how you
Guide yourself.
kind of guide yourself in the warp. Is you know where Terra is because that's where E is. So you just everything's based on that.
Right.
So for 10,000 years, he has sat on this chair, being a lighthouse.
And things have gotten worse.
And things have gotten worse and worse and worse. And now the religion that wasn't supposed to exist, that worshiped him as a god, now runs
Exists,
everything.
yeah.
And da 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 da.
And technology is failing
Technology
to
is
the point where like they have forgotten how to make things.
well. Let's things like there are dudes that went back to planets and broke open old stuff and found patterns for like how to make a knife, and the reward was they got their own damn planet
Yeah.
because they brought new technology back into the fold.
Yeah.
So like it's wild. Like it's
Yeah.
gotten really, really, really bad. But for 10,000 years, 1,000 psychers a day, so 1,000 psychics, people that are able to like transmit thought or control things with their mind or whatever, have been fed to the emperor. Not like eat your like, here comes the airplane. Not that kind of fed,
Yeah,
but like
but, like-
literally sacrificed for him to absorb their energy to keep him alive for 10,000 years. And a bunch of Primarchs have become demon Primarchs now, and they're fighting for the warp.
Yeah.
The gods are everywhere.
So the one thing
It's
you have
gotten wild, and that's the state of 40K. So
Yeah.
what we just did in 20 minutes was cover about 15,000 years worth
And
of
there's-
history in the
there's
storyline.
Books and
there's
there's
and-
novels that cover all this, and then the novels for quite it was almost stagnant because you had the Horus Heresy novels, and then you had a bunch of the Space Marine novels. This now the novels post Heresy are starting to advance the story.
Mhm.
Different authors are writing different things that are kind of pushing it in a coherent for a long time, and I would say 10 or so years. The novels were kind of like, oh, the space Marine
fought
fought
each
here. These guys fought here.
It's
Now, Abner will write something, and Graham McNeil will say something.
Yeah.
And it's all starting to be a
Aaron
cohesive.
Dembski
You can
Ballard.
actually see a fucking plan,
Well,
which makes it.
but they had to finish Heresy, and you're talking about 66
yeah, no, they
books over
did. So it was kind of like
19
on pause.
so
Everything else was
66 300 plus page books,
books. Yeah.
in 19 years.
in
which is
9
still
years, which is
impressive.
just the Horus Heresy. That like little basically that like rebellion that we kind of just glossed over. That's how much literature.
And the
was
Horus
written about
Heresy,
this.
that galaxy-wide civil war, is quite literally like it's like 5 years. Like we're not talking about like
Well, maybe 7. I want to say 7. Why the number
It's
7?
sub 10.
But it's definitely shorter than 10. Like he has to fight his way back to
yeah.
and
So,
they fight a bunch of stopgap battles.
but
They get him
everything that
nowhere.
happens in the Heresy is the reason that 40K, that the world of Warhammer 40,000
It's so bad.
sucks, is
Yeah.
because of the fallout of the Heresy. So 10,000 years, and we're still dealing with the fallout of it.
10,000 years, and we
So-
still haven't figured shit
And
out.
that's kind of where we're at. So that's all of your big players.
Yep.
So that covered who the Emperor is.
Yep.
The Primarchs and the fact that some are good and some are bad. Some of them are now demon Primarchs, which means that they follow the gods of the warp. Some of the Primarchs are lost. Some of the Primarchs aren't lost, but they're kind of useless.
And for
Yeah.
most of the time, the bad guys had their demon Primarchs, and the good guys had nobody.
Yeah, it was
yeah,
the good
because
guys
a
back
lot of
against
the
wall.
Primarchs that were left after the Civil War just kind of dipped. They just kind of were like, "Yep, we're out.
Yep.
Like, just see ya."
They
Yeah.
disappeared.
gone.
They fought. They got killed, which
Um,
was something that
yeah,
know.
or they
so-
got hurt and
Yeah.
they couldn't come back, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So now the tagline for the game, the tabletop game, is that in the grim dark future there is only war. So there is no warm and fuzzy in
Yeah.
in the Warhammer universe.
Warhammer, there are no good guys.
Yeah,
If
and that's
you
what I
are
try to explain
going-
to people. And it's like, well, I typically play good guys. I'm like, they don't exist.
They don't.
I
I
don't
would
exist
say
in this game.
Ibram Gaunt is a good guy.
I'm like, there are individual good guys that you can play, but as a whole,
Yeah, but he still
the-
fights for the Empire. So
Well, it's
you're
fine,
still
but
like,
he's still a fucking great leader.
I mean, and
Okay.
it's all really
Takes care
satire
of his
too.
boys.
technically speaking, Mortarian's a great leader.
No,
He
he's
is.
a horrible human being.
He's not a human anymore.
Well,
He's
there
a
we
demon
go.
Primarch.
Exactly.
But he cares about his guys.
But he cares about
Does
his
he
people.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
I don't think
He
That
cut
is-
that deal because all of his Primarchs got that sickness and
Or all
literally
the
cut
Space
that.
Marines. Yeah,
All of his Space Marines got that sickness and cut that deal with Nurgle to where he was like,
just
I don't
save
want
save my guys. Just
and
save
he was
my
like,
sons. That's
cool.
all I want.
So here's the deal. That it won't kill them. They'll never get better, but they won't die.
I would say being a fucking plague marine is about the worst fucking thing ever. I can't stand Nurgle. I don't like Mentorian
I'm
because
right
it's
there.
fucking disgusting. Angron, I can get behind fucking Corn. Blood for the Blood God. Let's go.
Why do you gotta hate on my booger boys?
It's disgusting.
They're gross. They're disgusting.
Grandfather Nurgle is fucking gross.
They just want a
Gross is
hug.
gross.
And it's
No, they
so
won't.
gross. Yeah, and I don't want to hug them.
They just need a hug.
Kill it with
Yeah.
fire.
That's all it is.
Just
Kill it with
the-
fire.
Just hug.
And it's
I'm
so
like,
gross.
one of the main characters is named Typhus. Like,
Yeah.
he's basically a walking plague.
Now that guy's a piece of shit. That dude even
Plague
betrayed his own
Marines. There we
mortality.
go. Fucking gross.
Yeah, they're plague marines. They're called plague marines.
Marines.
Yeah.
They're fucking.
It's a
It's,
fucking-
it's
what's
your
just
point?
gross.
They're gross. They're gross.
And they're fucking hard to kill too. It's fucking awful. You
why
split them
they're
open and like
Yeah,
shit
they're hard
falls
to
out of
play
it. Yeah,
against.
that's
It's hard to
fucking
kill
fucking-
viruses.
Yeah, well, they've proved that.
Yeah. Me staying in my ass.
Again.
Fucking.
Perchera, I can get the Iron War. I can get behind those fucking guys. Not.
Iron
I
Within,
like
Iron
the good
Without.
guys. I'm a more of a good guy thing on
Oh,
this.
speaking of, did you watch the
They're
thing?
getting their own show.
They're getting their own show.
The Iron Warriors are getting their own show
Oh
on
my
Warhammer
god,
TV.
yes. Did you watch that thing I sent?
No.
It's all like the next 2023.
It's all the new stuff coming
all
out.
the new
but
stuff coming to
There's
Warhammer
literally
TV
a show coming out called Iron Within.
and Iron Without, and it looks amazing.
He doesn't bother me. He's disgruntled. He was a bitch though. See, he's a bitch.
He's emotional as fuck.
Yeah, I can't. Him, he's unstable, but not
He just-
unstable in the like the horse.
I mean, he's not
fucking
unstable.
herb.
He's just emotional.
He's a bitch.
He needed a hug.
Whines. Yeah, and he didn't get a hug.
He needed a lot of
Look,
loving. He needed a lot of hugs.
If this
and he
was
needed a lot of
20
good boys.
daughters instead of 20 sons, they would all have OnlyFans for the amount of daddy issues that are
Oh,
running
yeah.
around in
They're
that
just-
family.
It'd be
It's
so much
insane.
better.
So
oh my
many
god,
daddy
the
issues,
content would
dad
be
issues.
great.
And also, the Emperor, shit father. Shitty,
Oh,
shitty,
awful.
shit father.
Yeah.
Just awful, 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 awful. You may look at them as like tools and there's like things that you need that you just need, but at least pretend to give a shit about them.
But you know, some of them
Yeah.
don't care. You think Russ gives a shit? He doesn't give a shit. Dorn,
Russ was more pissed off
Dorn
that
and
the
Gilliman
Emperor
probably
ever got
could ha-
involved.
he
He was just
probably
like,
need a
leave me
hug.
alone.
He was like, I was doing my
Alpharus doesn't-
snowball.
Leave
And he's
me
like-
alone.
And he's like, all right, look,
Leave me alone.
I only need you when I really need you to just go fuck somebody up. And Russ
Yeah.
was like,
I could do that.
Okay.
I could do
If
that.
that's all you
I
need,
got
then
it.
I
I
got
got
it.
it.
Okay. We can
Yeah.
talk.
But
then okay, there actually I do think about something. There is one legion that I thought I was reading about, I think about that is actually good guys. Salamanders.
No, Vulcan's a good dude.
Vulcan's a good
Salamanders are
dude,
still
yeah.
blindly violent.
Yeah. Okay, fine. For one Primarch that is like an actual like good person. Like a
Because
good
Vulcan will
yeah,
actually.
Jagatai Khan and Korax are probably
No, absolutely not. Because
Jagatai,
Vulcan
no.
will actually try to figure out whether or not he actually needs to fight.
Okay,
Yeah. And his one of his main priorities as a legion is like save civilian life.
Yep.
You need to save people.
Whereas the Khan and everybody else,
They
they're
don't
just
care.
like,
well, I know
They
the
defeat
Khan
enemy,
and-
they move on.
yeah, it's like if it is more strategic to do an orbital bombardment and just level the city with everybody in it than it is to actually go in there,
Yeah.
they'll do it. Whereas Vulcan is like,
Well,
nope,
when-
we're going in because we're going to cordon off the enemy. We're going to make sure the civilians are out. Then we'll
No.
engage if we
I know
have
that.
to.
he's more of a should we do it, not could we do it.
Yeah.
Well, they can all do it.
Yeah. Or will we do it? Yeah.
Well, and then
So,
to top it
that's-
off, Vulcan is also, when we'll get into it, but he's a perpetual anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he ain't dying.
So he's a different kind of
he's there.
guy, and then what that all means because they're starting to flesh him out. What him being a perpetual actually means to the whole wider
the
universe.
best
I'm starting
instance
to
of
read
it,
his novel
Yeah.
too.
and I'm
that's
sure
good.
we'll get to the story at some point because I'm a big orc fan. So, but we'll get to the story about the Beast Arises,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which Vulcan is in heavily,
Yeah,
and I think
Mhm.
that's actually a better representation of who he is as a Primarch than
And he's also in
anything from Horus Heresy.
and then also in the new book too when he's fighting
yeah, but that's still a heresy book.
yeah, that's a heresy book, but it really tells you what he's
Yeah,
about.
but this is like
self-sacrifice
3,000
and all
years
that kind of
later, so
stuff.
he's even had time to reflect on the heresy, and you get to learn even more about
Oh,
what he's
really?
like as a Primarch. Yeah.
that's cool. They've all got their different, like the good guy, and it's funny because I'm not always necessarily like I like there's shades of gray with these guys for the most part.
Very much so.
Like Korax, I'm not quite sure what the fuck he like really believes. I like his Legion. Him, like he's not my favorite Primarch by any
Big
stretch
fan
of
of
the imag-
birds.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Loves birds.
But I like the
Reads
guys.
a lot of poetry.
Like I like what they
big
do.
into poetry.
They're the
Were you about to say the same joke?
they're the fucking
Were you
Green
gonna do
Berets
it? I
of
love it.
fucking-
Just really big into poetry. He
Yeah.
listens to The Cure a lot.
I like Dorn. Dorn, I like. Sanguinius, his guys eat people, so that's kind of fucking weird.
Always, even before they met him, was just
Well,
like,
that's what they really
"That's
were.
what
He
we
had to
do."
fucking like.
Yeah, he toned them bitches down. He was
You
like,
guys gotta
he was
relax.
like, yo, if you tried pig's blood, you can't just be eating people. Like,
So there's several. Okay, that is kind of. We should probably talk about that. Is that Space Marines have several abilities, and one of them is I forget what the term is, but if a Space Marine eats someone's brain, they will get their thoughts and their knowledge in them. They can
Most of them
ingest-
don't do that.
Most of them don't do that, but some of them do
fucking
not have
yeah,
a
but
problem.
the Night Lords and
The Blood Angels are like fucking.
Just
Let's
crack
go.
it open and let's go.
I like how they all spit acid and then it starts to break.
Yeah,
Like all of them, the first batch, they were like, shit just burned and shit.
yeah.
And then now they're like, it makes my teeth hurt.
I don't want to do that.
It,
I don't want that.
It's like,
You got that venom.
yeah,
Got that bad venom.
not a big fan.
Yeah. Yeah, so Space Marines have like, and these were all stuff that was like thought of back in like first edition.
No, 100%.
And a lot of this
And now they've
stuff
had to
is
try and
kind of,
fix it over
they're
time.
trying to
right?
fix it over time because it was just like,
So,
it was a bunch
Well,
of.
if you read Space Marine, the novel,
Yeah.
some of the stuff in there is not canon.
bizarre.
it's wild.
And they
yeah.
I think somebody put a gun to somebody's head at fucking Games Workshop and said like reissue this thing.
Yeah.
They had to do it kicking and screaming because like this isn't canon. But, like no, reissue this. There's like gay Space Marines and there's all kinds of like fucking crazy shit in that novel.
Yeah, but if you think about, if you're a multi-organ, acid-spitting, brain-eating, 7-foot tall super soldier,
Yeah.
who are you gonna bang other than another space?
Well,
marine?
what they've done is they've done. They
Nobody
said that
could survive it.
they don't. That's not an issue. They don't.
Well,
don't.
later on, they just made it to where they have no sex drive.
They don't care.
Yeah,
It's just
they are
they're just
completely-
not interested in
Yeah.
sex.
Mhm.
So,
So they don't have
but
families.
this game
they
did
don't
come
do
out in the
anything.
80s. So
Yeah.
And well,
They
I
were
think
trying to
what they
cover
did is they
everything.
said like, they're like friggin' Alexander the Great's friggin'.
Yeah,
Thousand,
more of
but
those
yeah,
like kind of like
yeah.
the Rome and
well, like
Yeah,
it's
great,
supposed to be
yeah,
that essentially they get genetically modified for war so heavily
yeah, that's all they care about.
that there is no sex drive because there's no possibility of making a copy.
Yeah,
There's
right.
no whatever, and
They're
so-
all sterile.
and the only thing that really brings you any sort of like rush or elation or whatever is combat.
It's combat,
There is
yeah.
no like
Combat and preparing for combat.
yeah.
Space Marines have
Except for the
two
Fulgrim boys, we'll get into all
Yeah,
that, but
that-
they get a little
They do
gross.
those things, but that's because of Slanesh and those guys.
Yeah, that's
and I
gross.
get
yeah.
that.
So
even like some of the stories you hear about like other Emperor's Children's, like they do.
yeah, they're weird.
They like
They're
some of
into
them.
some
Some
freak
like
shit.
I've like you've read some things. And you're like, dude, that's a sick mind to think of that shit.
Yeah, they're in some freak shit.
like,
but-
that is some really like sicko kind of shit.
But anyways, to recap,
Yeah.
big players that you need to make sure you pull away from this. The Emperor,
Big guy.
big guy. Everything's his fault. At the end of the day, it's all his
Yeah,
fault.
he's the CEO. He's
Yeah.
the Elon Musk.
He is- He is the
40K.
one.
Yeah. Elon
everything's
Musk is
his-
now the bad guy. For
It
some
all really
reason.
comes down to the Emperor. He's
He-
everything.
He Elon Musk the shit out of this galaxy.
the Primarchs are his 20 sons. We only know about 18 of them.
Yeah.
The Adeptus Astartes,
Yeah.
who are the Space Marines. The Adeptus Mechanicum, who is also, or Adeptus Mechanicus, which is the Occult Mechanicum. Those are the boys from Mars.
Mhm.
The Adeptus Custodes, which are his
The
bodyguards,
Praetorian Guard.
otherwise
Which are
known as, and if you hear us refer to
Emperor's
the Golden
bodyguards.
Boys, the Golden Boys are the Emperor's bodyguards.
They're literally draped in gold. Their armor
Their
is
armor's
100%
pure gold
Pure
and
gold.
blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Xenos, as you brought them up, are essentially anything that's not human.
Yeah.
Or belongs to the Imperium, because the fact of the matter is Space Marines aren't human. So we'll discuss that later.
Yeah, there's
But
like with
Xenos-
everything, there's caveats.
Yep.
and
Xenos are all of
Shades
the
of
aliens,
gray.
and we'll get to who all of them are eventually,
Yeah.
or we won't. And
Yeah,
you'll deal
I
with it.
know.
Yeah.
And then
you're
you have the Greenskins, who I think just deserve their own thing, because they're not technically Xenos, because they're made out of fungus.
It
They
goes-
are a plant. They are a plant with a gun that they believe works.
the basics of 40K, and I always tell this is it is fairies, orcs, and knights in space.
Yes.
Which tracks, considering that the first game was actually Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and they took all the stuff from their fantasy game
thing,
and they just
put it into
yeeted it into space.
into sci-fi.
Yeah.
And they yeeted sci-fi into it, and they
Yep.
made this weird thing, and it took a beast of its own. Now it's a different thing, but that's how it started. So
Those
if
are
you
the
kind of get
factions.
those-
You've also got. There are space elves.
yeah, the
Right,
Eldari.
and those all fall under the Xenos thing.
And
And,
there
we'll do
are
a Xenos.
Creatures that
We'll do a Xenos
eat
thing
planets.
because I think we have to do the Xenos, and
And
I
then
think
you've got the anime guys.
yeah. So
The
I think
Tau.
The Tau.
I think we have to do Xenos, and then we probably have to do Creatures of the Warp, and then we probably should do something if we're going to continue to dig in all these stories. Probably do something about the creatures that are bigger than everybody,
What do you mean? Which ones are those?
like the Satan and
Oh,
like
yeah,
the all the astral creatures. and
Those
shit
guys
that are
that gets weird. That gets really
where it's
deep
like
into-
the forerunners, like all the ones that made everybody before there was.
Mhm,
Because there's like a
anything.
race that made the orcs, but because they were supposed to be essentially that race's space marines that were going to go out and cleanse the universe.
Yeah,
So like, but that's a whole nother thing.
that's a whole different thing. Right now we're looking at humans.
Okay, so far, so we primed Warhammer,
Yep.
and why the fuck we talk about it so much?
Yeah.
We learned
What did we learn today, Jazz?
What did we learn today? At the end of the day, are we better people?
pale ale was made.
IPA.
Pale
India Pale Ale.
IPAs,
God damn it.
IPAs were made so that the beer didn't suck as much when it got to India.
Yeah.
So you should subjugate the brown races in India.
Nope.
during the colonial- colonial wars.
Nope.
Wow.
That's
Well,
not
We're
funny.
like 5 episodes old, man.
We go back into the fucking. We go back into meat, or we go into warfare. Like you either fucking at some point
Can
you
we
gotta.
edit that?
I majored in colonial warfare. We fought, the British fought, and that's what their whole point was.
Literally, it was for the spread of the British Empire. And
Empire.
they
Yes.
needed beer, so they figured out how to modify
Yeah.
home beer
Yeah,
to get it over there. So
Yeah.
that was the whole thing.
yeah. Didn't work
Uh,
out so well at the
Oh
end.
man, everyone's
but-
gonna have to stop making IPAs now. They're gonna be like, "What the whole shit!"
shit.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, it's a remnant of colonial times. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's, yeah.
It's fine.
So
Yeah. I get what you're saying now. but
we got that.
Jesus.
We also touched on the fact that there's more than just hops.
Well, they weren't fucking.
There's like
they weren't winning with fucking scotch.
oh god,
That's a whole different thing.
that just makes everybody want to fight.
Yeah.
So
They got to be
there's more than one hops.
light drunk fighting,
Yeah.
not drunk fighting.
And we told you about the major players and the fact that the Warhammer universe, there's a reason that anybody and everybody out there will pick that universe they want to live in, right? And they're
Yeah.
like, man, I would love to live in the
Shire.
Lord of the Rings universe or
Yeah.
the this, that, and the other. Nobody's picking Warhammer.
Nobody.
Nobody's looking at it going like,
It is a terrible, horrible place.
everything
and
sucks.
Everything sucks.
all of it. Like, there's not good anything.
Like winning, like winning the lottery, like the birth lottery, is like having like a small apartment and a menial labor
you have
job.
your own room.
Yeah.
Like that's
like winning the birth
yeah,
lottery,
and
where
you're
you're
the
like,
shit.
holy shit! Like I can go, I make a wrench,
yeah.
and I've been doing. My father has made
But
the
if you
same
say
wrench.
the wrong joke at a bar, then the
Yeah.
Inquisition's at the door, and you're going.
You don't
on
want to
and,
meet those
it's-
guys ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, what did we learn today?
We learned.
We learned beer's good.
Beer's good, and the
and 40K bad.
the
The
Warhammer
British
universe
Empire
is
tried to
awful.
conquer the world with
Yes.
booze.
Yes.
and Big Daddy E tried to conquer the world with super soldiers.
The galaxy.
He did.
The galaxy.
Galaxy was super soldiers.
Yeah.
And that didn't go well either. Maybe if they drank more fucking rum and beer.
Because almost like
They
every
should, huh?
empire, if you get too big and you let the communication fall apart, you end up losing control
well, I mean,
over everything anyways.
if you look at like,
Oh no, I'm not letting you go down this tangent, buddy.
no, I'm going.
No,
because
nope.
they did the same thing. Like Xenos bad. Like literally, if you're not human,
Oh, it's very British.
you're horrible.
Well, straight up, the fact of the matter is they modeled the entire 40K Imperium
Well,
Mhm.
off of it's off the Romans, which is
Right.
quite literally it's
no,
converted.
but the Romans were
Yeah.
better at live and let live.
No.
Oh, they were much better at living and let live.
I'm pretty sure there's
Even
a lot
the
of people in Gaul that would disagree with you.
Eh,
And every Germanic tribe,
dude,
Yeah.
the Germanics
The
fucking
Prussians,
kicked the fucking shit out of them,
the
so
Prussians,
they stopped.
the Celts,
They didn't try to. There wasn't fucking
Picks.
the genocide that the Imperium
That's
of
the
Man
thing.
is committed.
Don't
Compared
look at me
to-
like that, Caitlin. It's the
Oh,
Picts.
what? Because the Imperium of Man got multiple planets and the Romans only got most of Europe? Is that where we're gonna go? Is that the
Look, man, as
scale
long as I
we're gonna
collected my taxes, you're pretty much allowed to do what the fuck you wanted
get?
to
Per
do.
capita, the Romans annihilated as many cultures as the Imperium of Man did
dude.
in the 40K universe.
I would disagree with you there. Stick to your meats. If you were, for the most part, I would say all of them. But
By the way, Big Jim's like grabbing his mic.
the Brits and the French and the Brits were pretty like. If you don't buy the program, the Romans were like, pay up.
Yeah, they like
kinda-
money.
You're like, pay up.
Actually, I don't know about.
And they assimilated too. They were big on assimilation.
England wasn't even a
Hey, if
thing
you guys
until,
could come fight- if
300
you guys
years
could-
after the fucking Romans left.
If you guys could come fight for me, then I can go back and be weird back in Rome.
yeah, but they tend to show up and like kill
Oh.
a third of the population and then go
No,
like,
like,
if you want to keep the rest, maybe you should pay.
Yeah, well, hey,
How
hey,
Exactly how the Imperium of Man works.
But they're worse. Way worse. No, well, if you
Well, we
if you're
established
compliant,
it. We also
you're fine.
established that there's nothing worse than the Warhammer universe.
Universe, that's what I'm
it's
saying.
terrible.
It's just not as
It's
good.
just
But you can
terrible.
definitely tell the structure that they
it's
based it
all
off
of
the
those things built towards. It's the worst of.
right. But the Warhammer universe is
Yeah.
essentially they took stuff that we recognize on Earth,
and made it
the
terrible.
Roman Empire or whatever, and they turned it to 11,
Yeah.
and then just added.
Well, if you look, the
Yeah.
emperor had the luxury of looking at what the Roman Empire did. Roman Empire did right and
That's
wrong.
because he was the Roman emperor.
Yeah, I
it
mean,
was
sure,
the
he was
first
like
time.
Caligula and some of the other guys, but he was
Yeah.
also probably like Julius Caesar. But
He was also probably Hitler. So
again, like, don't go to war in Russia in the winter, that kind of thing. Like,
Maybe don't kill
was
6
start the
million-
land war.
maybe don't kill 6
Yeah.
million people because they like fish more than you. Like,
Yeah,
you know.
but he apparently didn't learn that fucking lesson because Jesus Christ, how many people were like, "Hey, can we just have our planetary system and we're fine? You guys do what you want to do.
But there are a lot of planets that did that where they showed up and they were like, "Hey, look,
Can we do?
You're
yeah,
part of
we're
us.
just gonna drop a fucking.
you're part of
legion
us,
Yeah.
and you're either gonna help give some of your farm goods to feed our people,
Yeah,
or we're gonna burn everything to the ground and nobody gets food." And it's like,
that's
Fine.
easy.
okay, so if I have to choose between a little bit more labor or
Dude, some guy-
everybody
My choice
dies,
is or death.
yeah, right.
Chicken or death.
Right.
Some people were like, "No, we're gonna fight you," because they didn't realize what they were up against. Because we would just like to continue on the way we are, and then they got friggin' virus bombed.
Yeah.
So
You have to love how most of the time they send like a human with like a couple of like Imperial Guard guys, and they're like,
this
"We
is how
really
it
think
is.
you should hang out." They're like, "Yeah, fuck you," and then they kill everybody, and then it's like,
Oh wait, who the fuck are these guys?
and then it's like Legion, and it's like, "Oh god,
Oh no! They want the worst.
These are war leaders.
Lead
Yeah.
with that shit. Lead with the other guys.
fucking awful."
Yeah. Lead with, like, if you just tell us, like, hey, we got worse. Then we're like, all right, no, we're good.
Should have led with that.
Yeah, should have led with that.
Shoulda
Lead-
led with that.
Lead with
See the guy with the
line.
fucking things hanging out of his head. Yeah, he's gonna come and eat your head.
Yeah,
Oh,
should definitely lead with that.
Yeah. No,
So, beer is good.
Warhammer bad.
Warhammer Universe bad.
Warhammer Universe. Warhammer's a lot of fun.
Warhammer the game is a lot of fun to play.
As
It's
an
great.
outsider looking in,
Yeah.
Warhammer is awesome.
Yeah.
But the Warhammer universe, everything
thing
is bad.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
All of it. Matter of fact, when a couple episodes back when we talked about the space wolves have Mjord, their own drink,
Yeah.
that will kill humans.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
No one can drink it
Even though
except for
fucking
space.
horrible.
That's
space
how
wolves.
awful the universe
So really,
is.
what I'm
It's-
coming out of this with is A, Russ was right,
Oh
and
Jesus!
B,
Wow, he's
just
playing it back to the
rollbacks. Yeah.
first
Sorry.
episode.
Damn.
I just can't.
I really want you to be. That's your sign off. Can
It
we
is.
just have
I know
that
it
be your
is.
sign-off?
Russ was right.
Russ was right. See you next week.
And Ibram Gaunt's a great guy.
He is a fantastic.
thank you.
There are individually good people who try their
Wow.
best.
Gregor Eisenhower is probably not a bad guy. His methods are a little rough, though.
Who is? What?
Eisenhower.
Oh,
Eisenhower. Yeah. No, but we could do episodes on Eisenhower.
Yeah.
But
The ends justify the means with that guy. But that's a lot. That's really kind of like the 40K universe.
at any rate, holy shit.
Yeah, we're keeping. it going.
This has been Warhammered, brought to you by Second Pitch Beer Company,
Thank
and
you.
coming to you from BattlePub Games Studios. Go find Warhammered on Facebook. Go find Second Pitch on Facebook
Instagram is a great way to find us.
and Instagram. They are very, very active on
Yeah.
Instagram.
Second Pitch Beer Co.
And find BattlePub Games on all the social medias
Yeah.
too, and go hang out over there.
Yeah.
Come
Until
visit
then,
us.
fucking appreciate you guys. Fucking
Thank you. This is always fun.
cheers.
Cheers.
Till next time.
Till next.
Games, drinks, and hijinks.
And Russ was right.
Oh fuck.